Olivia's hands trembled as she pushed open the weathered door of her small cabin, the hinges groaning in protest. The late afternoon sun fell in slanted golden beams across the rough wooden floor, illuminating dust motes that danced lazily in the still air. She paused for a moment, her gaze sweeping over the interior she had meticulously kept in order despite the emptiness that now pervaded every corner. The smell of dried herbs and faint smoke lingered in the air, a comforting reminder of routines that no longer mattered. Her eyes, swollen from nights of restless tears, reflected both exhaustion and a stubborn glimmer of defiance. Olivia had lost more than she could bear to name. The ache in her chest was a constant companion, yet she clung to the fragile notion that life might, in some form, continue to hold a fragment of hope. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the distant clatter of hooves on the dirt path. It was the sound of approaching change, though Olivia did not yet know it. She straightened her posture, wiping her hands on the worn apron she always wore when tending the small garden that thrived stubbornly behind the cabin. Each plant, each sprouting leaf, was a testament to the life she refused to surrender. Yet even the garden seemed to mourn with her, bending under the weight of the coming dusk, shadows stretching like long fingers across the ground. Her heart, already heavy, skipped an anxious beat as a figure emerged from the golden haze, approaching the cabin with a slow, deliberate gait. Matthew was not a man who inspired confidence at first glance. He was chubby, with a round, gentle face that seemed almost out of place in the harsh landscape of the Old West. His clothes, though clean, were simple and worn, suggesting a life unburdened by wealth yet familiar with hardship. There was an awkwardness in the way he carried himself, a hesitance that hinted at kindness rather than threat. His eyes, however, were sharp and perceptive, scanning the cabin as if he could read the story written in the dust and the faint scuffs on the floorboards. He paused at the threshold, hesitant, aware that his presence intruded upon a sanctuary of grief. Yet something compelled him forward, a mixture of empathy and unspoken purpose that propelled him past the boundary of comfort into uncertainty. Olivia's breath caught in her throat as he crossed the threshold. The floor creaked beneath his weight, announcing his presence in a way that felt almost ceremonial. She had long ago stopped expecting visitors, and the intrusion stirred a complex mixture of fear and curiosity. Her hand instinctively clutched the edge of the doorframe, knuckles whitening. Matthew stopped a few feet away, allowing the silence to stretch, heavy and charged between them. Neither spoke immediately, the stillness thick enough to feel tactile, pressing against their chests with unrelenting weight. Finally, Matthew took a cautious step forward, his voice low and steady, carrying a warmth that seemed almost foreign in the cold air of the cabin. I thought you might need help," he said, his words stumbling yet deliberate, carefully chosen to avoid offense. Olivia's lips pressed into a thin line. She had grown accustomed to self-reliance, to shielding herself from the intrusion of strangers, and yet, in the curve of his hesitant smile, she sensed something neither threatening nor intrusive, something familiar, as if empathy had taken a tangible form and entered her space without demand. Her eyes scanned him, assessing, searching for hidden motives, for deception. None came, only an earnestness that pricked at the corners of her resolve. She had survived on her own for months, weathering loneliness and despair, yet the sight of him stirred an unexpected flicker of anticipation. Something in the way he held himself, not arrogant, not imposing, but steady and unshakable, spoke of a different kind of strength. Olivia's chest tightened, a cocktail of skepticism and curiosity churning within her. Matthew shifted slightly, taking another step closer, and in that movement, a subtle yet undeniable tension sparked between them. It was a moment suspended in fragile equilibrium, the kind of instant where lives teeter on the brink of change. Then, almost imperceptibly, he reached out, not aggressively, not with entitlement, but with the quiet assurance of someone who recognized the fragility before him. His hand brushed against a fallen flower she had placed on the floor earlier, lifting it with care and holding it between them, a gesture that spoke volumes without a single word. Olivia's gaze followed, her breath shallow, caught between instinctive retreat and the magnetic pull of connection. In that single, deliberate motion, everything shifted. The walls that had protected her from grief and intrusion seemed to shiver and crack. The air, heavy with the scent of herbs and fading sunlight, pulsed with an unspoken promise. For the first time since her loss, Olivia felt the edges of despair soften, the rigid lines of solitude blur into possibility. She could not explain the sensation. The sudden surge of hope mingled with fear, but it surged nonetheless, undeniable and transformative. Matthew's eyes met hers, steady, unwavering, and in that gaze lay a quiet understanding. Neither needed to speak. The gesture alone conveyed what words could not, a recognition of loneliness, of strength, and of the tentative bridge that might span the distance between them. Olivia's chest rose and fell, with measured breaths, her fingers twitching at her sides, the long-held tension of months unraveling in a heartbeat. The door, once a barrier, now felt like an invitation, a threshold not just of wood and hinges, but of possibility. And as the sun dipped lower, casting its last golden rays across the cabin floor, the room seemed to breathe with them. Shadows stretched, mingling with the light, and in that delicate balance, Olivia realized that life, messy, unpredictable, and painful, was poised to change forever. Matthew's presence, quiet yet insistent, had shifted everything, and in that single unassuming gesture, the narrative of her solitude fractured. The climax of that encounter was not loud or violent. It was subtle, profound, a turning point that promised the unknown while honoring the depth of what had come before. For the first time in months, Olivia felt the stirrings of courage, of curiosity, and of connection. And though the future remained uncertain, the moment was thrilling, electric, and full of the weight of possibility, an exacting promise that her story, long defined by sorrow, might now bend toward something entirely new.